Have you ever noticed that the most intelligent people you know often prefer to be alone? It isn't because they are antisocial, nor because they lack the ability to connect with others. Rather, it is because they have discovered something about human nature that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. They have come to realize that solitude is not loneliness, it is freedom. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most profound and uncompromising philosophers, understood this truth better than almost anyone. He deliberately chose solitude over society for much of his life, and out of that decision came insights about human intelligence, creativity, and the very nature of consciousness that continue to shock and inspire people even today. What makes Schopenhauer's view of solitude so unsettling for most is that he did not withdraw because he was broken, bitter, or incapable of social interaction. He stepped back because he was intelligent enough to see through the illusions that keep most people chained, illusions of social validation, the comfort of group thinking, and the exhausting performance of constantly trying to fit in. This is the uncomfortable truth we must confront. Those who embrace solitude are not running away from intelligence, they are running toward it. While the majority busy themselves with conformity, compromise, and the dulling noise of endless social distraction, the truly intelligent do something far more radical, they think. And make no mistake, this isn't about glorifying antisocial behavior or promoting isolation. It is about understanding why some of the greatest minds in history chose solitude as the foundation for their most extraordinary achievements. Time and again, solitude has revealed a kind of intelligence that most people never develop, simply because they are too afraid to face themselves without the crowd. Schopenhauer once wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." At first, this may sound simple, but its meaning runs far deeper. The moment you depend on others to tell you who you are, what to think, or how to feel, you surrender the very thing that makes human consciousness extraordinary, your ability to think independently. Solitude, then, is not an escape from life. It is the very condition that allows the mind to awaken. If you truly want to understand the connection between solitude and intellectual growth, and why choosing to be alone can be a sign of intelligence rather than weakness, then make sure to subscribe to this channel. Here, we uncover the philosophical insights that expose hidden truths about human nature and human potential. The people who embrace solitude are not abandoning humanity. They've simply recognized that much of what passes for connection is little more than disguised manipulation, conformity, and dependency. These patterns of interaction often smother genuine thought, stifle creativity, and block the possibility of real growth. Solitude, then, is not about rejecting relationships or becoming a hermit. It's about understanding why the highest levels of intelligence so often demand the courage to stand profoundly alone. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. He argued that intelligent people choose solitude because they recognize what he called the will of the masses as a form of intellectual suicide. What most people don't realize is that much of their thinking isn't truly their own. Their opinions, values, preferences, even their emotional responses, are shaped by the groups they belong to, the media they consume, and the pressures they constantly navigate. The truly intelligent, however, come to a sobering realization. The moment you're in a group, even a group of two, you are no longer thinking with your full intellectual power. A part of your mind is always diverted. Instead of engaging in pure thought, you begin monitoring social dynamics, managing impressions, avoiding conflict, seeking approval, or maintaining harmony. This isn't a conscious choice, it's automatic. The human brain has evolved to preserve group cohesion, and in doing so, it literally reshapes how you think when others are around. You become less original, less creative, less willing to chase uncomfortable truths, and less capable of sustained, deep thinking. Schopenhauer observed that most people never truly encounter their own intelligence, simply because they are never alone with their thoughts. Life sweeps them from family interactions to workplace conversations, from social gatherings to endless entertainment, always surrounded by the noise of other people's voices, opinions, and expectations. The intelligent individual who deliberately chooses solitude makes a radical choice. They have decided that access to their own mind is far more valuable than social approval. They recognize that their best ideas, deepest insights, and most creative solutions rarely come from group discussions or brainstorming sessions, but from the stillness of solitary, sustained thought. This doesn't mean they reject collaboration or dislike human connection. Instead, it shows they understand the difference between engaging with others from a place of inner completeness versus relying on others to feel whole. intellectually or emotionally. Notice how truly intelligent people behave in group conversations. They may appear slightly detached, not out of disinterest, but because part of their mind is always watching. They observe how group thinking forms, how individuality is diluted, and how easily intelligence gets compromised under collective pressure. They've learned that the price of belonging to most groups is conformity, and they've chosen not to pay it. Here lies the second great insight. Schopenhauer described it as the art of being alone without being lonely. It's a skill that requires inner development, a richness of inner life that most people never cultivate. There is a profound difference between someone who is alone because they cannot connect with others and someone who chooses solitude because they've built the capacity for deep, meaningful experience within themselves. Schopenhauer spent decades shaping what he described as the world as representation, the capacity to build entire universes of thought, imagination, and insight within the boundaries of his own consciousness. He had no need for constant social stimulation or shallow entertainment, because he discovered an infinite fascination in the workings of his own mind. For many people, this is terrifying. Those who have never cultivated inner richness struggle with solitude. When left alone, they become restless, bored, anxious, or even depressed. They dread silence because they have never learned to enjoy their own company. To them, solitude feels like exile, a punishment rather than a gift. But for the intelligent person who chooses solitude, the experience is entirely different. They make a radical discovery. Their own consciousness, properly developed, can be more stimulating than most conversations, more entertaining than most media, and more rewarding than nearly any group activity. This inner richness doesn't emerge by accident. It requires what Schopenhauer called the cultivation of the mind. Reading deeply, thinking systematically, appreciating art and beauty, wrestling with philosophical questions, and creating meaningful work. Through this process, solitude transforms. It is no longer emptiness to be escaped but a home to be cherished. Such people can spend hours in silence without ever feeling lonely, because in truth, they are not alone. They are accompanied by the vastness of their own inner world, a world they have spent years building, refining, and exploring. Through books, the solitary thinker enters into dialogue with the greatest minds in history. They wander through ideas that most people will never encounter, exploring territories of thought untouched by ordinary conversation. Their projects emerge not from external obligations or societal pressures, but from their deepest interests and inner drive. To the average person, this kind of solitude looks unsettling, even threatening. How could someone be content without constant validation, entertainment, or social distraction? Their peace in solitude disrupts the common belief that happiness depends on endless interaction and external approval. Schopenhauer's third insight was clear. Intelligent, solitary people cultivate intellectual independence, the ability to think thoughts that have never been thought before, because they are not constantly checking their ideas against group consensus. This independence is what makes solitude so dangerous and so powerful. History shows us that most breakthroughs in science, philosophy, art, and innovation emerged from individuals who were willing to spend long periods alone. They followed strange, impractical, or even useless lines of thought that others dismissed. Yet those very explorations reshaped the world. When you're surrounded by people, no matter how supportive or intelligent, your mind remains confined by invisible boundaries, by what others consider acceptable, possible, or worthwhile. Social presence unconsciously triggers conformity. But in true solitude, those limits dissolve. It is only in this space of isolation that the mind can venture into wild, uncharted territory. Here you can entertain ideas that would sound absurd aloud, pursue questions with no immediate application, and allow curiosity to wander freely. In this way, solitude becomes not emptiness, but the birthplace of originality. You can spend weeks, even months, developing insights that cannot be easily explained to others. This is where true genius emerges, not from group brainstorming sessions or collective collaboration, but from individual minds that are free to go deeper than group thinking will ever allow. History makes this clear. Newton's laws of physics, Einstein's theory of relativity, Darwin's theory of evolution, and Schopenhauer's own philosophical breakthroughs all arose from long periods of solitary reflection. Each of these figures understood that their greatest contributions would not be born in crowded rooms, but in the silence of their own thoughts. The intelligent person who chooses solitude isn't rejecting society. They are simply protecting the conditions that make original thinking possible. They recognize that their most valuable gift to humanity will be ideas that exist beyond the boundaries of common knowledge, insights that could never come from committee meetings or the safety of consensus. This path requires immense intellectual courage. To pursue it is to wander into mental territory without maps, without reassurance, and without knowing whether the journey will lead to something profound or to nothing at all. Yet those who embrace solitude have learned to live with this uncertainty. They understand it is the necessary cost of intellectual originality. Schopenhauer described this as the fourth insight, mastery of what he called the economics of attention. The mind's energy is limited, and intelligent people recognize that every social interaction, no matter how enjoyable, demands a cognitive price. Most people never notice this hidden drain, but the solitary thinker guards their attention as their most precious resource. Every conversation demands more than just exchanging information. It requires navigating social dynamics, reading emotional states, interpreting unspoken agendas, and constantly calculating subtle interpersonal equations. This invisible labor drains energy far more than most people realize. Intelligent individuals who deliberately choose solitude have measured this cost and concluded that much of it isn't worth the mental effort. They understand that the mind's bandwidth is limited each day, and they would rather invest it in thinking, creating, learning, and developing than in maintaining relationships that add little true value. At first, this might sound cold or dismissive, but in reality, they are protecting something vital: their intellectual energy, their creative potential, and their capacity for deep focus. These resources are the very tools they use to make meaningful contributions to the world, and they know those tools become dulled by excessive social entanglement. Instead of scattering their energy across countless shallow interactions, they often cultivate only a small number of deep, genuine relationships with people who respect their need for solitude. The rest, casual socializing, networking events, group obligations, they consciously set aside as unnecessary drains on their attention. Schopenhauer himself embodied this principle. He structured his life to guard his mental energy, taking long solitary walks, eating most meals alone, and devoting his days to philosophical work. To outsiders he appeared eccentric, antisocial, even melancholic. But his extraordinary intellectual legacy proves otherwise. By preserving his cognitive resources, he ensured that his mind remained sharp, focused, and capable of producing ideas that would endure for centuries. The intelligent person who embraces solitude has made a deliberate, strategic choice about how to direct their mental energy. They've concluded that depth is more valuable than breadth, that quality outweighs quantity, and that intellectual achievement carries far more weight than social popularity. For them, solitude isn't withdrawal, it's optimization. Fifth insight. Schopenhauer recognized that those who live in solitude often develop what he called philosophical vision, the rare ability to see patterns, connections, and deeper truths invisible to those consumed by the everyday drama of social life. When freed from constant social engagement, a person begins to observe human behavior with fresh eyes. They notice that much of what people obsess over is trivial. They see recurring patterns in social dynamics, repeated endlessly across different groups and contexts. They begin to understand the psychological machinery, the desires, fears, and illusions that silently governs most human actions. This expanded perspective is both liberating and isolating. It grants the solitary thinker a kind of anthropological distance, allowing them to study human society almost as if from the outside. They can see the games people play, the masks they wear, and the illusions they defend. This is not misanthropy. It is clarity. Yet clarity comes with a cost. Once you perceive these patterns, it becomes increasingly difficult to rejoin social rituals as if they were meaningful. What others take seriously may strike you as hollow, even absurd. And while this awareness sharpens the mind, it also deepens the solitude of those who carry it. Most human activity is not the result of conscious choice or genuine wisdom, but is instead shaped by unconscious desires, hidden fears, and powerful social pressures. Those who choose solitude often do so because they have developed enough philosophical perspective to see through these illusions. To them, it is exhausting to pretend that social conventions and cultural priorities matter as deeply as people act like they do. This doesn't make them superior. It makes them different. They have exchanged social ease for intellectual honesty, popularity for authenticity, and the comfort of belonging for the clarity of independent thought. While they can still engage with society when necessary or valuable, they do so with intention rather than compulsion. They participate not because they crave validation, but because they choose to, often as observers or occasional contributors rather than constant performers. Here we arrive at Schopenhauer's most profound insight about the intelligence of solitary people. They have not rejected humanity. Instead, they have recognized that the highest human capacities, creativity, wisdom, original thinking, and deep understanding, require conditions that ordinary social life rarely provides. Solitude, then, is not an escape from the world but preparation for engaging with it more meaningfully. It fosters authenticity rather than performance, contribution rather than consumption. Schopenhauer believed that those who embrace solitude often have the most to offer society precisely because they've given themselves the time and space to cultivate insights that only prolonged reflection can produce. They are not running from human connection. Instead, they are cultivating something of great value to bring into it when they choose to engage. The truly intelligent person understands that their deepest contributions will not come from constant availability or endless accommodation, but from the originality and depth that only solitude can nurture. The deepest forms of understanding can only be reached through the patient cultivation of an inner life, a process that solitude uniquely allows. This is why Schopenhauer believed that those who choose solitude are not just intelligent, but almost terrifyingly so. They have discovered something that quietly threatens the entire social order: the realization that much of society runs on cycles of external validation and intellectual conformity. Through solitude, the mind develops in ways social thinking cannot. It becomes capable of insights, clarity, and creativity that group-driven thought will never produce. When you feel discomfort around people who seem genuinely content in their solitude, it isn't simply social conditioning. It's recognition. You are sensing that they have accessed something rare. A relationship with their own consciousness so profound that they no longer depend on society for identity, meaning, or purpose. The solitary person is not antisocial, damaged, or afraid of connection. They are not running from people. They are running toward truth. They have realized that the highest forms of intelligence demand the courage to sit alone with one's own mind, and they have chosen to cultivate that courage, no matter how strange it makes them appear to the world. What makes them terrifyingly intelligent is not only their originality of thought, but also their willingness to follow that thought wherever it leads, even if it takes them away from social approval and into depths of understanding most people will never explore. So the next time you encounter someone who appears completely at ease in solitude, someone who does not seek constant stimulation, who finds fascination in their own inner world, remember Schopenhauer's insight. You may be standing in the presence of a person who has discovered a form of intelligence born only in silence, a wisdom that arises only when the mind is free from the constant influence of other minds. They are not escaping intelligence, they are pursuing it. And what they uncover in that pursuit may be exactly what the world most desperately needs.